Now to Hungary, which is holding elections on Sunday, with nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orbán seeking a record fifth term, but trailing in the polls. He's therefore called in the heavy-hitting support from Washington, with US Vice President J.D. Vance campaigning in Budapest for the Hungarian leader. Mr. Vance denied trying to influence the election and instead accused the EU of trying to sabotage Hungary's economy.
Hungary before the election. More Europe or more Russia? In mid-April, Hungarians will decide which direction to take, toward liberal democracy or an authoritarian model inspired by Russia. Incumbent Prime Minister Viktor Orbán wants to end Western support for Ukraine and further distance the country from the EU.
They are blocking what rightfully belongs to us. Our money from Brussels and our oil from Ukraine. They are blackmailing, threatening, and intimidating us, the bureaucrats in Brussels and the war mafiosi in Kiev.
A few streets away, another mass demonstration. This crowd cheers for Péter Magyar, leader of Hungary's largest opposition party, TISA. His vision for Hungary:
our homeland is part of the West, part of the European community. Our homeland is part of NATO.
Two rallies, one deeply divided nation. On April 12th, Hungary will elect a new parliament. Orbán frames the election as a choice between war and peace, while Péter Magyar pledges to return Hungary to a European path. Can Magyar unseat Orbán? Hungary's younger generation has only known Viktor Orbán as Prime Minister. Polls show they are also the most skeptical of him. Over 16 years, Orbán and his Fidesz party have dominated the political landscape while shifting from center-right to a radical right-wing populist force. Orbán has deepened ties with authoritarian regimes, especially Russia under Vladimir Putin. US President Donald Trump openly supports Orbán's re-election. The EU has long criticized Hungary for democratic backsliding and limiting judicial independence. Viktor Orbán's promised rocket-start economy is now flatlining. He forecast growth of 3 to 6% for 2025. The reality was less than 0.5%. Salaries are about half the EU average. Living standards are among the lowest in the EU. In liberal Budapest, frustration with Orbán is high, with many dreaming of a different Hungary.
I dream of voting Viktor Orbán and his government out so we can rebuild democracy.
It would be good if there wasn't so much corruption and they didn't plunder the country.
Instead of addressing corruption, the government fills Hungary with billboards portraying EU officials and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky as warmongers. The campaign claims they, along with the opposition leader Péter Magyar, want to drag Hungary into the war in neighboring Ukraine. This tactic spreads fear. Many Orbán supporters genuinely believe the opposition would send Hungary to war.
We don't want to go to war. We don't want our young people sent to war.
A voter holds a sign reading "Stop the War" with crossed-out images of Zelensky and Magyar.
I see this across the EU. Everyone else says, let's go to war, except him, Orbán.
For the first time in 16 years, Fidesz could lose power. This crowd is betting on Péter Magyar and his TISA party. A former Fidesz supporter, he took over TISA in 2024, a small party that had existed for a few years but played just a minor role. He promises to unlock frozen EU funds, end corruption, and appeal to people across the political spectrum. At TISA's final major rally before the general election, hope is in the air.
I'm just happy to be here. I'm so hyped.
This is hope for us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hope.
They hope for a European Hungary. Polls show the opposition leads, but Fidesz remains unbowed. Hungary stands at a decisive crossroads.
Well, let's look ahead to Sunday then with Zsuzsanna Végh, who's a programme officer with the German Marshall Fund of the United States. She has a particular focus on Central and Eastern Europe. Welcome to DW. So what's gone wrong then for Viktor Orbán after winning 4 consecutive parliamentary supermajorities? Why is he now in trouble?
Thank you for having me. This is quite a complex question, but one thing that he no longer can show is an economic legitimacy behind his rule. Over the past several years, we have seen the economy stagnating, inflation being high, living standards dropping, and this fueled not only the frustration that was previously there in certain voter segments with the erosion of democracy, but also economic frustration. And what changed in the past 2 years is that instead of a very fragmented opposition that under the system that Fidesz built could not effectively challenge the governing party, now we see a new movement and a new party led by Péter Magyar, who managed to channel this very widespread frustration into one movement that can now effectively challenge the governing party.
And is there any sign that yesterday's speeches from J.D. Vance and that call on speakerphone from Donald Trump, have they shifted the needle at all in Mr. Orbán's favour?
No, it didn't, and it won't. And I believe that was not the point. The point was to highlight the importance of the election and to mobilize the base, but not really to grow the base. The undecided voters who may still go to the polls on Sunday are much more concerned about cost of living, economic questions than Hungary's foreign relations. So the visit of J.D. Vance is not something that will influence them. And besides, it's nothing new. It's widely known that Prime Minister Orbán is supported by the American administration, so it does not come as much of an added value, really, to his campaign.
So if Viktor Orbán loses Sunday's election, do you expect him to go quietly?
I expect that there will be some level of contestation in the aftermath of the election day. I can even foresee that the opposition party would also contest some districts. If the results are close, this is in the cards. But the question is whether these contestations remain within the constitutional and legal framework, or there will be anything more broad and consequential. Ultimately, Viktor Orbán has built a system that has many traps for anyone who follows him, and these traps can make it much harder for a new government to effectively govern. So his presence will be looming even if he is out of office.
Right. Just a quick word about some of those traps. So these include the rewritten constitution and various state entities.
Yes, exactly. Under the new constitution, several institutions have been set up and then also staffed with Fidesz loyalists. These range really from the president, the members of the constitutional court, the head of the National Bank, the State Audit Office, the highest court, and so on. So their presence in the system, if a new government would not get a constitutional majority, that is, would mean that they could slow down legislation, they could even block legislation, and they could even block a new budget for next year.
This is similar to what we've seen in Poland. If Mr. Orbán wins, Would a fifth Orban term bring more of the same, or does he have more tricks up his sleeve?
If we look back to the past 16 years, what sort of stands out is that over time, the Orban governments have been radicalizing. Both in terms of domestic behavior, there has been increasing pressure on critical voices over time, but also in the government's actions vis-à-vis European partners, and we see that most prominently now in foreign policy decision-making. So I would not only expect more of the same, but actual continued radicalization. In the domestic field, this could mean that from intimidation of critics and critical voices, we could move towards further repression of such actors, actually.
Right, and if Péter Magyar wins, I think it's important to remember that he's cut from the same political cloth as Viktor Orbán, so it's not going to be all rainbows and unicorns.
Yes, he does come from Fidesz, and he is a conservative politician. What he pledges to change is the governmental attitude to corruption. So that is something that he wants to prosecute. He wants to join the European Public Prosecutor's Office. He wants to also establish a new agency that can prosecute corruption and address what has not been addressed over the past 16 years in this domain. But his impact on the system will also depend on whether he manages to gain a constitutional majority, so 2/3 of the seats, with which he could actually fundamentally reform the system and re-establish democracy,
Right.
or whether he will be constrained by those factors that we have just talked about.
Good talking to you. Thank you so much for talking us through that, Zsuzsanna. Zsuzsanna Végh from the German Marshall Fund. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.